For many, The Addams Family is remembered as the two 1990s dark comedy movies starring Angelica Houston, Raul Julia, and Christina Ricci. But it actually has a much older history. It began as a cartoon by Charles Addams in The New Yorker, which then became a fixture in American pop culture members. Carolyn Jones, Morticia Addams. Academy Award-winning actress Carolyn Jones had a film career many actors would die for, having worked with everyone from Hitchcock to Elvis to Sinatra. But it was playing Morticia Addams that was the apex of her career. This is high praise considering she went on to play over 30 more roles after the show ended. The most memorable included Queen Hippolyta on Wonder Woman, Queen of Diamonds for 5 episodes of Batman, and Chuck Connors' wife on Roots. Jones suffered from colon cancer. Her final role was Myrna Clegg on the soap opera Capital. In 1983, she succumbed to the cancer. She was 50 years old. Ted Cassidy, Lurch and Thing. At 6 foot 9 inches tall, actor Ted Cassidy's 20-year career with many roles that usually related to his tall frame and stature. On The $6 Million Man, he took over from Andre the Giant to play Bigfoot. He also starred opposite Paul Newman in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and narrated the Incredible Hulk TV series. Sadly, life was cut short for Cassidy after complications from heart surgery, and he died at age 46 in 1979. Jackie Coogan, Uncle Fester. Named the greatest boy actor in the world, Jackie Coogan's star burned bright in the 1920s. He starred alongside Charlie Chaplin in 1921's The Kid. His fame quickly plummeted, however, when he reached his 20s. His mother married his business manager, and together they withheld the millions he'd earned from his work. Coogan sued, which resulted in the Coogan Law, which protects child actors and their earnings. It was 4 decades later that Coogan would reclaim his long-lost fame. He played the strange Uncle Fester, which garnered him new fans. But Coogan struggled to come to terms with the fact that he was once the most beautiful child in the world and now playing a hideous monster. Consistently working into his late 60s, he appeared on shows like I Dream of Jeannie, The Brady Bunch, and Hawaii Five-0. In 1984, he died of cardiac arrest at age 69. Ken Weatherwax, Pugsley Addams. Ken Weatherwax, who was cast as Gomez in Morticia's one and only son Pugsley, avoided going out in public due to his sudden fame. Once the show was canceled, he was kicked out of several schools due to troubled behavior. This led to him joining the Army to avoid the Youth Offenders Program. After his service, he returned to Hollywood, this time behind the camera. He worked as a grip and set builder. He grew to accept his fame and returned to the role of Pugsley in the 1977 Halloween special. He appreciated the love and attention of his fans, and when he passed away of a heart attack in 2014, there were 2 funerals, one for his family and the other for his fans. He was 59 years old. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure you give it a like and subscribe to Facts First if you haven't already. Now, back to more details of the Addams Family cast. Blossom Rock, Grandmama. Stardom arrived at age 69 for Blossom Rock. With a fright wig that took an hour to put on and a pound of makeup, Rock transformed into Pugsley and Wednesday's dear old grandmama. Rock's moment in the spotlight didn't last long, however. She suffered a stroke and lost her speech in 1966. She retired to the motion picture Country House and passed away 12 years later, at age 82 in 1978. Felix Silla, Cousin It. The 3-foot 11-inch Felix Silla's first major role required him to hide behind the pint-sized ball of hair of the Addams' beloved Cousin It. From working on the show, small parts in big productions were aplenty for Silla. These included TV shows and films such as Planet of the Apes, Battlestar Galactica, E.T., Return of the Jedi, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and Spaceballs. Silla often attended fan conventions and played Nevada clubs with his own musical combo, the Original Harmonica Band. He died on April 16th of this year from cancer. He was 84. Parley Bear, Mayor Arthur J. Henson. Parley Bear claims the most guest appearances of any actor on The Addams Family, as Arthur J. Henson. Bear took roles on many TV shows thereafter, including Hogan's Heroes, The Dukes of Hazzard, and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He also appeared in multiple movies from License to Drive to 1993's Dave. He suffered a stroke in 1997 and later died from complications of another stroke in 2002. He was 88. Vito Scotti, Sam Picasso, Professor Altshuler, Miri Hahn. Vito Scotti, famed with hundreds of acting roles, was seen in 4 episodes of The Addams Family. This included 2 turns as Sam Picasso, and later he joined the Halloween special. Scotti would often play multiple roles on a single show. While doing this on The Addams Family, he did the same for Gilligan's Island, The Magical World of Disney, and Fantasy Island. He voiced the Italian cat in Disney's The Aristocats, and he may be most recognizable as the old-world baker friend of Don Corleone in The Godfather. His last film role was opposite John Travolta in the 1995 movie Get Shorty. He died a year later of cancer at age 78. Eddie Quillen, Joe Digby, Clyde Arbogast, Horace Beasley, George Bass. Eddie Quillen played multiple characters on the show as well. For 2 episodes, he played insurance agent Joe Digby. After the show, Quillen had a steady career over the next 20 years, starring in a variety of TV entertainment. This included a role on Little House on the Prairie and The A-Team. After retirement, he enjoyed a quieter life of golf, bowling, and swimming, before dying of cancer at age 83. Alan Joslin, Sam Hillard. Alan Joslin joined the Addams Family in the very first episode, playing Hillard 3 times. Most of Joslin's work predates the show, where he appeared on Broadway, radio, TV, and film. In 1981, Joslin died of cardiac failure at age 79. Margaret Hamilton, Granny Frump. Originally up for the role of Grandmama Addams, but turned it down, Margaret Hamilton instead took on the role of Morticia and Ophelia's mother, Hester Frump. The actress who gained silver screen immortality portraying the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz kept busy since The Addams Family in shows like The Partridge Family and the TV movie Letters from Frank. Hamilton passed away in 1985 at age 82. Fortunately, there are 2 Addams Family cast members still with us. And then the role of Grant, the new Addams Family, had 4 divorces and battled a heroin addiction. Now, she delights her Addams Family fans by attending various conventions. It all started with a simple melody. Even though the classic 60s TV series is revered as somewhat of a cult classic, the program never really captured the same kind of audience that The Munsters did. Once the series faded into oblivion, all that was left in our collective memories was the show's memorable theme music composed by Vic Mizzy. Of course, that all changed when the franchise was brought back from the dead with the 1991 film. In fact, that film was the result of sheer happenstance. A bunch of Orion studio execs were all in a van together when the chief marketing executive, Tom Sherrack's son, started singing the Addams Family theme song. The next day, producer Scott Rudin met with Barry Diller, one of the studio's chiefs, and discussed the possibility of resurrecting the series as a film. Diller loved the idea, and it was greenlit right then. Tim Burton had nothing to do with the films. There's a pervasive misremembering of the facts that likes to lump Tim Burton into the production of the Addams Family movies in one way or another, but he had nothing to do with the films. In truth, the Barry Sonnenfeld-directed films probably were in part inspired by some of Burton's style, but the man behind Edward Scissorhands and A Nightmare Before Christmas was not involved during production of any of the movies. Terry Gilliam, who worked on the Monty Python films and directed the quirky films Brazil and Time Bandits, was considered for the directorial position, but Sonnenfeld ultimately was the one who scored the job. He went on to direct Big, starring Tom Hanks, and When Harry Met Sally. Cher could have played Morticia. Rudin confirmed this fact in an interview with EW, where he revealed that the singer was indeed very interested in the role, but she was never really considered for the part. It seems Angelica Houston was always destined to play Morticia. And of course, Cher has certainly shown her talents as a legit actress. She made a cameo on Will and Grace back in the day and played Tess in Burlesque. She also gave a pretty incredible performance in Moonstruck, and then another in Mermaids. Carol Kane managed to make her way into the sequel. Currently best known for her unnerving portrayal of Lillian in the Netflix series The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Carol Kane fit in perfectly with the cast of Addams Family Values. Instead of casting the original actress Judith Malina for the minor part of Morticia's mother, Grandma Addams, Kane landed the part regardless of the fact she was actually 11 months younger than Angelica Houston. Addams Family Values was one of Raul Julia's final films. Unfortunately, Julia was diagnosed with stomach cancer in 1991 and passed away not long afterwards, at the age of 54. The on-screen chemistry between his character Gomez and Morticia was undeniable. So when he died, it was just another reason why the third film, Addams Family Reunion, was doomed to be a flop. That being said, Tim Curry's portrayal of Gomez may have been one of the only redeeming features of the ill-fated direct-to-video sequel. The Sister Act connection. Rudin and screenwriter Paul Rudnick had worked together on Sister Act back in 1987, although Rudnick chose to be credited as Joseph Howard, citing creative differences as being the motivating factor. Once production began on the Addams Family film, Rudin called upon Rudnick to do an overhaul on the script, having seen his expertise in action a few years prior. Following the success of the first film, Rudnick was retained to ensure the script for Addams Family Values reflected the vision and tone of the first film. Along with Rudnick's writing, Sonnenfeld's directing, and a reunited cast, the sequel in many ways outshone the original. If you're enjoying this video so far, make sure you give it a like and subscribe to our channel. And stay tuned to find out what the Addams Family has to do with Michael Jackson. There really weren't any boundaries. There was very little that had to be cut to maintain the first film's PG-13 rating. Morbid jokes involving the killing of babies, grotesque gags that employed the aid of guillotines, and heavy sexual innuendo abounded. There seemed to be no limits. The Addams Family film was very much a dark comedy with seemingly unrestrained, ghastly glee. You could get away with a lot of that kind of thing back in the 90s. Adult humor was perfectly interlaced with references that kids could also enjoy. Fun for the whole family. Christopher Lloyd was a big fan of Fester before he landed the role. He grew up reading the Charles Addams comic strip, and Uncle Fester was always his most loved character. Whenever the New Yorker came in the mail, he'd eagerly open it up, hoping Fester would be featured. So when he got the part years later, he was absolutely overjoyed at the opportunity to play one of his childhood favorites. But Lloyd also feared he wouldn't be able to live up to the character that he, for years, had idolized. Not only that, he was also uncertain he would be able to embody the role because of his lanky physique. Christopher had just wrapped up playing Doc Brown in the Back to the Future trilogy, and he was concerned he wouldn't be the right fit to provide Fester with the right voice and attitude to properly capture what Charles Addams had envisioned. But alas, he nailed the part and became one of the standout cast members in the films. Lloyd had to adapt to fill the role. Uncle Fester is a short and rotund man, and Christopher Lloyd is tall and skinny. So, how was he going to be able to adapt himself to play the character? No CGI was used for the effect. In fact, Lloyd resorted to a very simple technique to pull it off. All he did was bend his knees to give himself a stumpier look. It actually worked out for his benefit in another way. Because he had to keep his legs bent all the time, it gave him a peculiar stride that only added to his character's curious aesthetic. Angelica Houston had a hard time on set. The actress was already on the petite side, but she was crammed into a tiny little corset before filming each day. Her eyes would then be pulled back using an adhesive facial prosthetic to give her signature narrow-eyed look. To top it off, she would spend hours in hair and makeup each day to give her that pale, unearthly glow. All that makeup and prosthesis was very hot. Days on set would stretch on for many hours, and because of the corset, she couldn't lie down to rest. But that didn't stop her from pouring her heart and soul into her acting, and she arguably gave some of the finest performances in the films. A long and grueling legal battle. Copyright battles aren't anything new in Hollywood. In 1992, David Levy held the rights to the original 1960s TV series and made the decision to take Paramount to court. He demanded they pay him a sum of money in the amount of $50 million. Charles Addams hadn't named the characters that he created, so Levy claimed he had given the characters unique attributes he felt like he should be credited and compensated for. To top that off, he touted he was the sole creator of the characters Thing, the disembodied hand, and Cousin It. After a long and winding legal battle, both Paramount and Levy settled things out of court. It does make us question whether Levy would have pursued the suit if the Addams Family hadn't been the unexpected commercial success it was. The Uncle Fester Godfather connection. Not only did Christopher Lloyd wear a bunch of makeup and squat to play the rotund and stout Uncle Fester, but he also wore a fat suit to step into the role. The bodysuit he wore actually came from the prop department of Francis Ford Coppola's Godfather Part 2. Bruno Kirby first donned the suit when he played Pete Clemenza, who aptly was nicknamed Fat in the classic gangster film. You can't blame Lloyd for not wanting to actually gain the weight just to play the character, no matter how well he ended up executing the part. Okay, we're going to wrap up this video by talking about Michael Jackson's bizarre horror-themed song, Is It Scary?, which was penned for the Addams Family Values soundtrack. Rudnick recalls Michael had completed the music video for the cheesy track when accusations came out that alleged Jackson's sexual transgressions. Suddenly, the studio wanted to distance themselves as far as possible from the troubled pop star. The tune would eventually be released on Jackson's Blood on the Dance Floor remix album instead, and all associations between the film and Jackson were quickly brushed under the rug. A Star is Born, Jones's early life and struggles. Long before she was Morticia, she was born Carolyn Sue Jones, April 28, 1930, in Amarillo, Texas. Biographer James Plant wrote in his book Morticia's Shadow, The Life and Career of Carolyn Jones, that she was raised in the West Texas town of Amarillo, and that from an early age she was always a misfit. Jones never really felt like she fit in with kids her age. She was extremely close with her agoraphobic mother, Chloe, but her father, Julius, was barely in the picture. He abandoned his family when Carolyn was still very young, and she never actually met him. Because of her crippling fear of leaving the house, Chloe was never really capable of holding down a job. So Carolyn and her mom ended up living with her grandmother and stepfather, who provided for the family. The house they lived in was quite small and cramped. Carolyn had lung problems as a child. She ended up in show business, hoping it would provide her some kind of escape. Because of her condition, she wasn't allowed to go to the movies, so she'd read movie magazines and listen to the radio. She discussed this in a 1961 interview. She recalled how when she was a child, her health was so poor she couldn't even go to school. Acting became her main obsession when she was still quite young. It was something other young people her age couldn't really relate to, so she became a bit of an outsider. From an early age, she wasn't lacking in ambition to get out of Amarillo and make her way to Hollywood. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure you give it a like and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. And stick around to see how the iconic role of Morticia Addams came her way. An alternate telling of events. In 1978, Carolyn offered up a very different story of her background to the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Although it should be noted that Jones had a reputation for exaggerating and embellishing the truth a bit at times. She claimed that when she was in the second grade, her teacher informed her mom that she had the gift of, quote, natural expression, and she could reach all the way to the rear of the classroom when she read books aloud. Her mom then enrolled her in what was called expression lessons, but that's not what her grandfather wanted. He had always envisioned her becoming a doctor or lawyer. But after she performed well at declamation in high school, he began to take notice of her gift. Eventually, he took her to Southern Methodist University, where she sat down on the steps of the school's rotunda and broke into tears. She expressed her only desire in life was to become an actress. At first, her grandfather protested, but eventually he gave in and told her if she must be an actress, then at least she should be a professional and be the best one she possibly could be. From high school plays to Hollywood movie star. Back in Amarillo, Jones started performing in school plays, where she gained a great deal of confidence. She started taking lessons, then moved to California, where she found her way to the Pasadena Playhouse. That was the moment when everything changed for her. For the first time in her life, she was finally in her own element. After graduating from high school in 1947, she enrolled at the Pasadena Playhouse training ground for aspiring thespians. For the next 3 years, she gave acting her undivided attention. She also appeared in a couple of summer stock productions in Ogunquit, Maine. But it was while performing at the Pasadena Playhouse that she was spotted by talent scouts for Paramount Pictures, who immediately signed her to a contract with the studio. Her first credited role in a motion picture was in 1952's The Turning Point. Jones made her TV debut on the Dumont series Gruen Playhouse in 1952. Jones's image drastically changed throughout her career. From 1952 to 56, she appeared in 26 movies, including A Hole in the Head alongside Frank Sinatra and King Creole, where she co-starred with Elvis Presley. But even though she was developing quite the reputation in show business, earning bigger roles was no easy task. One of the things she had to do if she wanted to keep acting was to get a nose job, and she didn't have the money for that at the time. Fortunately, her grandfather agreed to pay for the procedure. After her surgery, however, everything changed for the better. Another major image change that boosted her career was the decision to dye her hair blonde. She recognized that her appearance meant so much when it came to making first impressions. As soon as she changed her hair color, she was signed to a term contract at Paramount. Eventually, however, she re-embraced her natural brunette hair color. When she was a blonde, the work came a lot easier, but she found that Hollywood was treating her more as a sex icon than an actress. Once she became a brunette again, she felt as if she had come back into her own. While the 50s were very good for her film career, by the time the 1960s came around, she had chosen to shift to nomination. Jones's declining career, cancer diagnosis, and death. After the Addams Family ended in 1966, Jones's career began to decline. She had several sporadic roles in the 70s, including Mrs. Moore, the wife of a plantation owner in the acclaimed miniseries Roots. In 1981, she landed the role of a power-hungry political matriarch named Myrna Clegg in the CBS daytime soap Capital. A year later, not long after Capital debuted, Jones was diagnosed with colon cancer after experiencing recurring stomach problems. Dealing with the crippling effects of the disease, she was forced to play many of her scenes in a wheelchair. After a short period of remission, her cancer returned with a vengeance in 1982. It rapidly spread to her liver and stomach, but despite being in tremendous pain, she finished up shooting the show's first season. In July of 1983, Jones fell into a coma while at her home in West Hollywood. She died a month later, on August 3, 1983. Her body was cremated the following day, and a memorial service was held at Glasbin-Willen Mortuary in Altadena, California, August 5, 1983. The show gave the characters names. Cartoonist Charles Addams was content to leave his characters nameless, and except for Cousin It was the TV show that changed that. He worked with producers and David Levy, former vice president of programming at NBC, to name all of them. There are a few details you may not know. He named Wednesday after the Fred Penner poem Monday's Child because it describes Wednesday's child as being full of woe. The Day of the Week poem may also explain why her middle name is Friday. Gomez was almost named Rapelli. The actor who played him, John Astin, was the one who got to choose. Charles preferred the other option. Pugsley was almost called Pubert, but it was changed to avoid any sexual connotation. It was later used for the third Addams Family child in the 1993 film Addams Family Values. The theme song. The Addams Family has one of the most recognizable theme songs of all time, with its catchy verses and snaps. It was composed by Vic Mizzy. There's a rumor that the studio didn't want to pay for a trio of singers. Instead, he layered multiple tracks of his voice to play all three vocal parts. The cast. John Astin appeared in The Wheeler Dealers, produced by Phil Ways. His contract said he could choose one of three projects after that: The Americanization of Emily, The Loved One, or The Addams Family. He originally auditioned for Lurch, but struggled to get into the character. The producers still recognized that he'd be right for the part of Gomez instead. He discovered Charles Addams' work at Johns Hopkins University in 1952. He was a fan and decorated his room with the comics, but took a deeper look after joining the series. He told the Baltimore Sun they weren't about being morbid, but about burying cold, stale habits and cliches. Ted Cassidy played two roles. He's famous for playing Lurch. He was also Thing, the disembodied hand that appeared out of boxes in each room of the mansion and the mailbox outside. Lurch was meant to be almost completely silent. Ted heard the servant bell ring in his audition and added the brilliant bit of improv with "You rang." Carolyn Jones was Charles Addams' first pick for Morticia. The producers wanted Barbara Steele, but she was living in Rome at the time and turned it down. Carolyn's estranged husband Aaron Spelling told her about the part. She was an Academy Award-nominated film actress, but wanted to be the lead in a TV series as well. She was already a fan of Addams, and despite a meeting where her dog bit him, they grew to be close friends. Ken Weatherwax played Pugsley. He was born into show business as the nephew of 30s film star Ruby Keeler. Before being cast, he'd been on TV as the face of Gleam toothpaste commercials. The pilot was directed by Emmy-nominated Arthur Hiller. After The Addams Family, he won a Golden Globe, an Academy Award nomination for 1970's Love Story. Goofs and bloopers.
Mostly what you didn't get to see was this stuff moving in and out between scenes. It was quite remarkable the way it was all handled.
That high praise for the effects department from John didn't stop goofs and bloopers from getting through. Ted was a tall man who'd have to bend over and hide when playing Thing. You can spot him from time to time, such as a bit of his clothes or a shoe. You may also spot crew members. There's a moment in episode 2 where Uncle Fester's climbing down a tree, and you can see the shadow of a moving dolly mic. One goof was done on purpose to see if fans would notice. In the pilot, you'll see the mailman approach the family's mailbox. When he opens it, you see he's right-handed. The goofy part is that later in the episode, he appears left-handed. Ted provided the hands here, just like he did for Thing. He wanted to see if viewers would notice the difference and switched throughout the series. Addams Family firsts. The Addams Family was the first show to ever feature a home computer. It was a unicav, or universal automatic computer. That first affected TV forever. Bruce Wayne had one in the Batcave a few years later, but it was the same one the Addams Family used. Scooby-Doo and the Addams Family. The third episode of the animated new Scooby-Doo movies is called Wednesday is Missing. It aired in 1972. It included several original cast members, including Carolyn, Jackie, and John. A young Jodie Foster voiced Pugsley. The episode launched the animated Addams Family series in 1973. Jodie returned for that as Pugsley. Irritating costumes.
Oh yeah, they started out with a real human herring. It was very heavy and very hot.
I mean, but then how long were you in that actual costume for the day? Because obviously you couldn't be in it all day, you'd pass out.
See, he had a bad agent. He had a lousy agent at the time, and he had to stay in it all week.
No, actually I stayed in there maybe 20 minutes, half an hour at a time. It wasn't that bad.
I guess that's not too bad.
That wasn't all. You may think Gomez's smoking habit was just a bit of character detailing. It was actually an early example of product placement. He'd often pull out a Dutch Masters cigar. John had a unique way of using them. He'd put them out on the breast pocket of his coat. The prop department had to line his suit with toxic asbestos to kill the flames. Ken was allergic to the 100% wool costumes his designer made. His mother had to buy all the clothes he wore on the show to avoid irritation. Carolyn's costume didn't cause health problems, but it was a nuisance. Designer Nolan Miller considered it the most difficult job she ever took on, and she had to make 30 identical ones for off-camera moments. Carolyn said it took her 2 hours to get her wig, makeup, and costume off. The dress alone took 20 minutes to get out of. Morticia and Gomez's real relationship. Morticia and Gomez's clear attraction was part of what made the Addams Family so popular. It was different from the lack of sexuality in other shows of the time. John claims it wasn't an act. They were attracted to each other, but wanted to keep it professional. He remembers getting pushback from networks, but still working to create a, quote, grand romance between them. He even tried to slyly work it into the advertising. As he described it,
I think I was in Baltimore, as a matter of fact. I said, hi, I'm Gomez Addams. My wife Morticia and I are the best adjusted couple on television.
And Addams inspired new laws. Jackie Coogan played Uncle Fester, but had plenty of acting experience before he signed on. He worked with Charlie Chaplin in a vaudeville act at age 4. He played an orphaned boy in the Silent Star's 1921 film The Kid, and the title role in Oliver Twist the next year. Jackie's image went on everything, including dolls, stationery, peanut butter, and even whistles. The estimated earnings from his career are $2 to $4 million. That money should have been all his, and it was until tragedy struck. His father managed his funds until he died in May of 1935, before Jackie's 21st birthday. He'd been getting a weekly allowance of $6.25 until then. His mother Lillian and stepfather Arthur said they wouldn't return any of his millions to him. They squandered it and he sued them over it. All he got back was $35,000. The law hadn't been on Jackie's side, but he helped to change it. California introduced the California Child Actors Bill, also known as Coogan's Law. The law says that all child star earnings must be deposited into a court-administered trust fund. It went into effect in 1939 and has been modified and upheld ever since. The show almost revolved around the family's butler. We all know and love actor John Astin for his wonderful performance as Gomez Addams, the husband of Morticia Addams. But did you know Astin almost played a different character entirely? In 1963, John Astin had played a role in the film The Wheeler Dealers, and crew members were so impressed with his work, he was offered another job, this time on the Addams Family. Even though John Astin had his eye on a couple of other projects at the time, the Americanization of Emily and The Loved One, he was more intrigued by the offer of the Addams Family. Initially, executives of the show discussed casting John Astin as the butler of the Addams Family. They wanted the butler to be the main character of the show. However, Astin had his qualms about the role. He felt he wouldn't do a good job portraying the character. The executives listened to his anxieties, and they eventually decided to give him the role of Gomez Addams, while shifting the main focus of the show so that Astin was still one of the stars. Imagine how different the show would have been if John Astin had played the butler instead. Ted Cassidy's audition changed the role of Lurch forever. At first, the creators of the show didn't want the character Lurch to talk at all. They thought it would be funnier if he was silent all the time. However, John Astin wasn't the only actor who helped shape the show into something even the creators couldn't fathom. Ted Cassidy auditioned for the role of Lurch, and he decided to make a bold move. During one audition scene, he ad-libbed the line, "You rang?" His deep voice fit the character so well, and the production team thought it was so funny, they decided to cast Ted Cassidy on the show. They also rewrote Lurch with a few more lines here and there, which did comedic wonders for both the character and the show. Lurch became so popular, the writers even made a few episodes that centered around his character. Oddly enough, Lurch was especially popular among young women who adored the show. Reportedly, Ted Cassidy received a lot of fan mail from teenage girls. Charles Addams had difficulty publishing his cartoons after the show aired. You'd think that the increased popularity surrounding the show The Addams Family would have helped Charles Addams' business. Unfortunately, however, Addams struggled to get his cartoons published. He got his start selling cartoons to The New Yorker in 1932, and in 1938 his creation of The Addams Family was also included in the popular magazine. While he didn't intend his first Addams Family cartoon to inspire any more in the same vein, the editors thought he could get some more mileage out of the idea. As a result, Charles Addams continued to publish Addams Family cartoons in the 40s and 50s. Sadly, after the show aired, The New Yorker refused to publish any more Addams Family cartoons. Without even knowing why they rejected his work, Addams had to find another magazine who was willing to publish his cartoons. If you think The New Yorker should have continued to publish Charles Addams' cartoons, click the like button. The actor behind Uncle Fester inspired a new law as a child. Uncle Fester was played by the actor Jackie Coogan. Before he played Uncle Fester, however, he was a child film star. He played the lead role in Oliver Twist as well as several other films. His father handled all of his earnings from the movies, but he died tragically in 1935. Even though Jackie Coogan was 21 at the time of his father's death, his mother and stepfather decided they wouldn't give Coogan any of the money he had earned while acting. They cruelly used his well-earned money on expensive items like cars, furs, and jewelry. Coogan sued the couple 2 years later. The law was on Coogan's side, and the state of California declared a new law called the California Child Actors Bill. It stated that the earnings of any child actor would be deposited into court-administered trust funds until they could be properly distributed once the actor reached adulthood. Although Coogan couldn't win back the money he had earned as a child, he helped to protect many other child actors from the same fate. Of course, later on, Coogan would more than earn a living as he played Uncle Fester in The Addams Family. Gomez's costume was a health hazard. In the show, Gomez often held or smoked a cigar. John Astin himself was quite a heavy smoker, but he also felt that the trait suited Gomez's character. The production team ran with the idea. After smoking during filming, John Astin would put the still-lit cigar back into his suit pocket. That way he could pull it out later without having to relight it. Of course, this would be incredibly dangerous with any normal fabric. As a result, the prop masters of the show lined Gomez's pockets with asbestos to prevent him from getting burned. While this was a clever solution to the problem at the time, asbestos would certainly never be allowed on modern-day television sets. Lisa Loring memorized lines before she learned to read. Lisa Loring was the wonderful young actress behind the morose character Wednesday Addams. When she landed the role, she was only 6 years old, and she didn't have much acting experience. The producers decided to take a chance by casting her, and they weren't disappointed. They initially cast her mostly because she greatly resembled Carolyn Jones, the actor behind Wednesday's mother, Morticia Addams. Lisa Loring took her part very seriously. Even though she hadn't learned how to read yet, she was still able to memorize her lines. Even though she wasn't allowed to smile while playing the melancholy role of Wednesday, Carolyn Jones always made sure to make her laugh between scenes. This kept Lisa Loring happy and upbeat throughout the entire process. It took Carolyn Jones nearly 20 minutes to get out of costume. While Morticia Addams' costume looks simple, it was actually quite complicated. The costume designers wanted it to look as close as possible to Morticia's outfit in the comics. This meant the dress had to be incredibly tight around the legs and feet. The costume was sealed tightly with Velcro along the back. The on-screen result looks amazing, but poor Carolyn Jones had a difficult time getting in and out of it. Jones admitted the dress took her 20 minutes to get out of. Furthermore, it took even longer to remove her wig and heavy makeup. Overall, it took nearly 2 hours to get completely out of costume after filming. That's some true dedication. They filmed a real lion for the show. The Addams family had a pet lion named Kitty Cat, who would occasionally appear for a few moments. The crew actually filmed a real lion, who was a retired circus performer. However, to ensure everyone was as safe as possible, the crew didn't allow the children, Ken Weatherwax and Lisa Loring, anywhere near the set while the lion was present. They also kept the lion's trainer, Steve Martin, nearby at all times. The crew filmed a few shots of the lion, then reused the footage so they could minimize the danger. John Astin and Carolyn Jones had feelings for each other. John Astin and Carolyn Jones did an amazing job portraying their chemistry as husband and wife on the show. Perhaps the reason why it looks so realistic is that there was a hint of attraction between the two. They wanted to keep their relationship professional to prevent any drama behind the scenes, but they did use their attraction to fuel the on-screen chemistry. The two were also close friends, and John Astin was the one to deliver the eulogy at Carolyn Jones's funeral. Lisa Loring's acting career. Born February 16, 1958 in the Marshall Islands on the Isle of Kwajalein, a United Nations Trust territory overseen by the U.S., Loring grew up in a military family. Both of her parents served in the U.S. Navy, but divorced not long after she was born. Loring spent some time living with her mother in Hawaii before relocating to Los Angeles. At 3, she started modeling and appeared in a single episode of the medical series Dr. Kildare in 1964. A year later, she was selected to play Wednesday Addams, the role that would prove to be the biggest in her career. After playing Wednesday for 2 years, Loring joined the cast of an ABC sitcom called The Pruitts of Southampton. In 1974, tragedy struck when her mother died of alcoholism at the age of 34. Loring was 16 when she died, and undoubtedly this horrific life event left her with quite a bit of heartache and uncertainty. After her childhood acting career, Loring managed to secure a role on the CBS soap As the World Turns. From 1980 to 1983, she played Cricket Montgomery, whom she also helped create. She later appeared in the slasher flicks Blood Frenzy in 1987 and Iced In 1988. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. And stick around for more about what Lisa Loring is up to today. Looking back. Almost 6 decades later, Loring looks back on her time on the set of The Addams Family fondly. In 2017, she was quoted as saying the show's cast and crew felt like her real family. She went on to say actors John Astin and Carolyn Jones, who played Gomez and Morticia, were like parents to her. The closeness of the cast made it a lot easier for her to keep up with everyone else while on set, especially considering her young age. While most kids in her age group were playing with dolls and coloring with crayons, she had to memorize lines even before she learned how to read. Loring says she had very little in common with Wednesday, despite the fact that she became inseparable from the character in the eyes of the public. Lisa liked pretty things like pearls and lace, while the character she played on screen liked all things dark and gloomy. Loring struggled to find roles. Loring joined the cast of The Pruitts of Southampton after The Addams Family wrapped up in 1966. That series saw her performing alongside stars like Phyllis Diller, Richard Deacon, and Gypsy Rose Lee, but it never really took off. After one season, it was canceled in 1967. For the next decade or so, she couldn't find work in the industry that seemed to fit her unique talents. Eventually, however, Loring managed to land that role in As the World Turns, but that part was, too, relatively short-lived. In 1977, she reprised her role of Wednesday Addams for a TV film called Halloween with the New Addams Family. It felt good for her to be back with her old TV family a decade after the original series had ended, but the reunion proved to be a one-off affair. Loring's personal life. At 15, Loring married her childhood sweetheart, Farrell Feinberg. The two walked down the aisle in 1973 and not long later welcomed a daughter. But that marriage wasn't made to last, and a year later they called it quits. Loring was married for the second time in 1981 when she and actor Doug Stevenson exchanged vows. Stevenson was a contract player on another CBS soap, Search for Tomorrow. Lisa and Doug had one daughter together before their marriage ended in 1983. In the late 80s, Loring worked as a makeup artist and writer in the adult film industry. In 1987, she married adult film star Jerry Butler. The two met on the set of the pornographic film Tracy's Big Trick earlier that year. In the years that followed, Loring grew increasingly disturbed by Butler's continued participation in that industry. Eventually, he even started performing in pornographic shoots in secret. In the early 90s, Butler told Dateline NBC he was, quote, addicted to the lifestyle of being a porn star. He further shared he felt ashamed by his secretive behavior and how it had taken a toll on his marriage. Loring and Butler later appeared on the Sally Jesse Raphael show to once again discuss the damaging effects of Butler's porn career. Loring eventually filed for divorce from Butler in 1992, which was the same year he retired from the hardcore porn industry, a decision he apparently made by choice. After almost a decade of being out of the spotlight, Loring married her fourth husband, Graham Rich, in 2003. 5 years later, they separated. In 2014, it was learned the estranged couple was in the process of divorcing. Loring has had several careers since leaving behind acting. By the early 90s, Loring's acting career had all but fizzled out. Around that time, she admitted to struggling with alcohol and substance abuse before checking herself into a rehab program. She went on to continue to pursue a Hollywood career, but the roles she was able to find were minor and few and far between. In 1995, she told people she'd grown tired of rejection, though she noted she was pretty picky about the kinds of roles she was interested in. After struggling unsuccessfully to make a career comeback in Hollywood in the 90s, she found work at an interior design firm based out of Santa Monica. In 2014, she appeared in the low-budget comedy horror film Way Down in Chinatown. She followed that up with an appearance in another B film, Dr. Spine. While these marked the first time she acted since 1992, they were not much more than novelty cameo roles. In 2017, she shared she was focusing on her family life and making stops around the country to make appearances at entertainment conventions. These days, fans are still eager to meet the actress who once played one of the most iconic characters of the mid-20th century. Even though she never managed to escape her typecasting as Wednesday Addams, Loring doesn't mind being known for that role. If anything, she's grateful that people still know who she is.
Oh, goody! Oh, Wednesday, Pugsley. Jealous of no one. I've been yours since that first day you carved my initials in your...
Beautiful women testing for it too, but
The Addams Family comic strip, 1938. A lot of people subscribe to the false notion that the Addams Family got its start as a TV show in the 60s, but the first time they appeared was actually in a series of comic strips published in the New Yorker in 1938. The Addams Family was the creation of Charles Addams, a freelance cartoonist born in 1912 to parents Charles Huey Addams, a piano executive, and his wife Grace M. Spear Addams. Reportedly, Charles based the character Morticia's slender appearance on his first wife, Barbara Jean Day, whom he was married to from 1942 to 1950. His second wife, Estelle Barbe, was a lawyer who notoriously tricked her husband into signing away the TV and film rights to his Addams Family characters. Charles and Estelle went through a fairly ugly divorce in 1956. He later married his third wife, Marilyn Matthews Miller, and moved to Sagaponack, New York in the mid-'80s, where they settled into an estate that was endearingly nicknamed The Swamp. Addams passed away September 29, 1988, at age 76, after having a heart attack while parking his car. Per his wishes, Charles's ashes were interred in the pet cemetery at the Swamp. Charles's cartoons regularly appeared in the New Yorker, and throughout his life he drew more than 1,300 cartoons. In addition to the Addams Family, he also created the syndicated single-panel comic Out of This World, which ran in the paper from 1955 to 57. The first Addams Family TV series, 1964 to 66. ABC was the first television network to take the characters Addams created and bring them to life. The Addams Family ran for 2 seasons and pitched itself as a spooky yet wholesome sitcom that explored the many adventures and escapades of the titular family as they clashed with the sensibilities of the outside world. The series not only starred all the characters featured in the comic strip, including Gomez, Morticia, Pugsley, Wednesday, Grandmama, Lurch, Fester, and Thing, but it also introduced the world to that catchy, finger-snappy theme song written by Vic Mizzy. Scooby-Doo Meets the Addams Family, 1972. After the show wrapped in 1966, the iconic family didn't make a return to TV until 6 years later, in 72, when they guest starred in one of the new Scooby-Doo movies produced by Hanna-Barbera. In the animated film, Scooby-Doo Meets the Addams Family, which is also known as Wednesday is Missing, Scooby and his merry band of meddling kids get duped into babysitting Wednesday and Pugsley, while Gomez and Morticia go off on a second honeymoon getaway. Scooby, Shaggy, and the gang run into trouble, however, when Wednesday goes missing from her family's Gothic manor. Of course, in the end, they find her, and as always, there was a big reveal moment when it was discovered that the housekeepers and a mysterious villain named the Vulture were behind the disappearance. The Addams Family Funhouse, 1973. ABC produced a pilot for an Addams Family variety show in 1973 in which they recast every role. Jack Riley and Liz Torres, lead writers of the special, played Gomez and Morticia. Fester was played by Stubby Kaye, Pat McCormick portrayed Lurch, and Butch Patrick was selected to play Pugsley. Patrick had previously played Little Eddie Munster on The Munsters, a similarly themed sitcom that ran around the same time as the original series. It also got higher ratings than the original Addams Family. While the producers of the show hoped it would get picked up and turned into a series, it only ended up airing as a one-off special. The first Addams Family Hanna-Barbera animated series, 1973. That Scooby-Doo Addams Family crossover television movie was so popular, Hanna-Barbera decided to give the Addams their very own animated series in 1973. The show was on the air for only one season, and it revolved around the Addams clan embarking on a cross-country road trip in their appropriately named creepy camper. While the show is all but forgotten these days, it did include voice work from a young Jodie Foster, who was just 11 when she provided the voice for Pugsley. Halloween with the New Addams Family, 1977. Here we have a special reunion of the original cast of the 1963 series that was broadcast on NBC in 1977. Everyone reprised their roles with the exception of Blossom Rock, who had played Grandmama Addams. She couldn't rejoin the cast as she was very ill at the time and died shortly after its initial broadcast. Halloween with the New Addams Family was a made-for-TV movie that was released just in time for Halloween. In it, Wednesday and Pugsley were all grown up, which allowed for an older Loring and Weathermax to make appearances. The plot involved Gomez and Morticia getting targeted by a band of thieves while Gomez feuded with his older brother, Pancho. The Addams Family, 1991. The Addams Family intellectual property was untouched through the 80s, and Charles Addams passed away in 88 at the age of 78. Following his death, rumors started going around that a reboot of the series was going to happen. The family returned once again in Barry Sonnenfeld's 1991 feature film. The film had a $30 million budget and starred Raul Julia as Gomez, Angelica Houston as Morticia, Christina Ricci as Wednesday, Jimmy Workman as Pugsley, Christopher Lloyd as Fester, Judith Molina as Grandmama, and Carl Stryken as Lurch. The film was a massive success at the box office and was hailed by critics and audiences alike. It grossed $191 million at the box office and spawned a new cartoon series, which we'll get to in a moment, and several video games. For a lot of Addams Family fans, this film is one of the best incarnations of the franchise because of how adeptly it adapted its subject material and characters to the modern world. The production values were stellar, the cast was strong, and it was genuinely funny. The Addams Family, the animated series, 1992 to 93. After the success of the Addams Family film, a new animated series was developed and broadcast on ABC. It was produced by the animation gurus at Hanna-Barbera, and John Astin was brought in to provide the voice for Gomez. Nancy Linari played Morticia, Rip Taylor voiced Fester, Carol Channing portrayed Grandmama, Jim Cummings played Lurch, Debbie Derryberry's voice was used for Wednesday, and Jeannie Elias played Pugsley. The animated series ran for 2 seasons and involved the family getting all caught up in their usual shenanigans at their estate. Addams Family Values, 1993. Barry Sonnenfeld returned to his director's chair again for this sequel to the 1991 film. After Morticia gave birth to the newest member of the family, Pubert, Gomez and his wife hire a nanny named Debbie, who ends up being a money-hungry serial killer. Debbie ships Pugsley and Wednesday off to summer camp while trying to seduce Uncle Fester in hopes of making off with his riches. Addams Family Values didn't do quite as well as its predecessor at the box office, so the studio wasn't particularly eager to make a third installment. Sadly, Raul Julia passed away in 1994 from a stroke. If he hadn't died so abruptly, it's possible a third film would eventually have been made. Addams Family Reunion, 1998. While often mistakenly considered the third Addams Family film, this straight-to-video feature-length offering was intended to be a pilot for a new sitcom based on the franchise. Tim Curry played Gomez, which is one of the only redeeming qualities of this otherwise dismal release. The Addams Family Animated Movies, 2019 and 2021. In 2010, Illumination Entertainment obtained the rights to the Addams Family, and at first they intended on making a stop-motion animated film based on Charles Addams' original comic strips. Tim Burton was at one point rumored to produce and direct this feature, but it was scrapped in 2013. Later that year, word spread that Pamela Petler, who previously worked on Corpse Bride and Monster House, was rewriting the film's script, but nothing more was heard for years. In 2019, Universal Pictures finally brought the family to a whole new generation of children with their box office smash computer-animated film. This new incarnation featured a star-studded cast, including Oscar Isaac, Charlize Theron, and Snoop Dogg. In October of 2021, The Addams Family 2 hit theaters and featured many of the same voice talents from the previous film. So far, the film has grossed $95 million worldwide against a budget of $47 million.
Troubled husbands. Adultery? Oh, no. Financial, money troubles.
No.
Turned into toad or reptile.
Is there an index? If villain breaks my paper pot,
Gotcha.
plucks off my beard and blows it in my face.
If I must strike you dead, I will.
Fester Addams Offshore Retirement Fund? What would it do?
What wouldn't it do?
Fester, all tribute to thee. Some called him inhumanly evil.
No.
Only our parents. I called him